Good evening, everyone. My name is Antonio Lopez, candidate for City Council of East Palo Alto. I am so honored to give the virtual launch, for the running for City Council of East Palo Alto. It's such a strange time to do it. I have to admit to everyone, I know we're going through through cloudy, smoky skies. The Bay Area is experiencing a really strange time, and we're experiencing so many layers of harm and hurt. We began with a presidency, which is spewing rhetoric against many of our communities. We then going through a violent pandemic, which is exacerbating a lot of the inequalities we've already experienced in the Bay Area, particularly in communities like Oakland and like East Palo Alto and like Richmond, where folks are having a harder time staying afloat. And so before we even start, I just want to check in with everyone, and I hope your families are okay. I hope you're drinking water. I hope that the food dispensaries that are closest and nearby to you are getting to you. Hope that your families are safe. Of course, I'm honored to have your ears and eyes for this event, but more than anything, I'm just checking in to see if your family's all right. And if anything, we can do, not even in the campaign, but as human beings, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, Antonio Lopez. You probably have my information, or, any of the poets here. I'm sure as well they'd be, we're always here. Well, the quote that this poem, so this is poetry. The quote that this event is inspired by is by the late Dr. King, who wrote, "We may all come from different ships, but we're in the same boat," right? And actually, Jesse Jackson would later make that quote famous, but it was attributed to Dr. King originally. And the Lopez Campaign is proud to announce our official campaign launch, Words for Better Today. And the event takes Dr. King's words to heart that, yes, he was speaking directly to the experience of African Americans in the struggle for civil rights in this country. At the same time, what he is saying applies to all of us: Latino, Pacific Islander, working class white, Asian, and beyond. As we all sort of congregate and make space in this interesting, wonderful, beautiful, weird part of the world of the San Francisco Bay Area, a place which has so much wealth and also so much disparity. We're still figuring out that experiment called democracy here and what that looks like. We don't have Confederate flags, but we certainly have very real signs of marginalization, discrimination that we're still figuring out as a community. And I hope that with everyone in attendance, that we're reminded that, yes, this is about a municipal office, but what I love about East Palo Alto so much is that, to me, it's a microcosm of what we can do for all of the Bay Area, right? It is a symbol of a city that is 30,000 people strong, 2.5 square miles, but it's nestled in so much wealth. And I firmly believe that if we can create equity and economic justice here, we can do it in so many other pockets of inner city communities across California. And so Dr. King reminds us that regardless of whether our migration was from rural Mexico or Louisiana or the islands of Tonga or Samoa, we are all facing the same situation now. That is the story of East Palo Alto, this 2.5 square miles that we call home. And facing a pandemic that has only exacerbated our housing crisis, this campaign is committed to envisioning an East Palo Alto that will remain affordable to all. And part of this change, we have to remember, lies in the lap of artists, right? So people who are in the business of imagining a better world. And so again, some folks may say, well, you began a campaign and you didn't bring any policymakers or legislatures. That is, of course, part of the job, but it's also important that we set the foundation to remember what is possible, and what better group of people to do that than the artists. And so I hope this is a symbol that this campaign is committed to education, to arts, to creativity, because only by doing that those are indispensable parts of flourishing as a community. And so this evening we'll bring together local artists and folks around the Bay Area to share their work, their poems, their songs, their words, to help us come together and imagine a better world through the cultures that raised us. And in the event, in the end in particular, I will lay out my vision for East Palo Alto and how it's going to take all of us to demand affordable housing, to safe and clean streets, to nothing short of what I'm calling our EPA Bill of Rights. And of course, the idea is that these Bill of Rights aren't just for EPA, they're also for other cities across the Bay Area. But because we're addressing my hometown, I hope to start here, and I hope to start the bigger conversation about communities like East Palo Alto around the SFA, beyond. And this event, I hope at large, when you come away from it, thinking that it's a reminder that the campaign launch is not just about me, about saying, hey, elect this guy into office, but it's about us, right? That it's gonna take a coalition that runs across Black, Latino, Asian, and white communities, across classes, across sexual orientations. It's gonna take us, frankly, to come together and ask, what is our common ground? What will it take for us to not just survive together, but thrive? And with those opening words, I'm gonna just give the layout of how this event will turn. Each reader and speaker is going to read poems for about 12 minutes, or their work for 12 minutes. And really, I've asked them to just, of course, the last thing you want to do is censor an artist or tell them what to say. But I just said, give us poems, especially in the time of COVID, to help us come together. Poems about place, poems about your hometowns, poems that show we are so much about the communities that raised us. We asked the poets, what are your roots? What are the things that the places that move you, and how they show up in your work? And hopefully that'll kind of plant the seeds for us to think about, how we can move forward in East Palo Alto through the inspiration and creativity of these artists. And so I'm proud to bring together artist Jacki Rigoni. We also have Yaylee Kamara. We have Eileen Cassinetto, and we have myself. And I will absolutely introduce each poet before they read. And just as an advisor for people, I was hoping to have Sean T, local EPA legend, to attend, and he did agree prior to, but unfortunately it seems he wasn't able to this evening. I hope that he is well. I hope that his family is well, and we miss him, and we hope to have him for the next event. Well, with that, me talking, I want to turn it to our poets. I'm really excited to hear what they have to say. So we're going to start with our very own Jacki Rigoni. Jacki Rigoni is an education specialist and the current poet laureate of Belmont, California. She has an MA in English from UC Berkeley and is a credentialed teacher, a finalist for the 2018 Francine Ringgold Award for New Writers. Jacki's poems appear in Nimrod International Journal, Moon City Review, and other anthologies. Her poetry collection, Seven Skirts, is forthcoming in the fall by Paloma Press. I am so pleased and honored to start this evening with our poet, with Port Laureate of Belmont, which is, the city to so many of our EPA kids from Carmel. So I'm sure you guys are excited as I am. Please give a big, warm, virtually distant hand for Jacki Rigoni.
Wow, that was a beautiful welcome, Antonio. Thank you so much. I am so honored to be here for this enlightened gathering of poets to support you, Antonio Lopez. I am not your constituent. I can't vote for you, but I am in the town to the north of you, and whatever affects East Palo Alto affects me. And so when we look to our local communities, it's really important that we look at who governs us in our own cities and also in our surrounding neighborhoods. And what I believe is that the ones who are going to get us out of this mess are a very diverse and equitable coalition of people who have equal voice at the table. And the people who are going to get us out of this mess are the young people and the artists. And so I'm really happy to support you, and I wish you best of luck. I also want to give a shout out to East Palo Alto Poet Laureate Kalamu Shashe. You should check her out, and she's a great resource for East Palo Alto. The first poem I'd like to read is a nod to our ancestors. When we're in times of trouble like we are now, it's easy to think that things are really bad for us. And when we look at the people we've come from, we look to say that we are from survivors. Because the only way we can be here is because someone before us survived. And so I wrote this poem. It's called In Search of Mary's Garden. It's after my great-grandmother. And I encourage you all to consider the ancestors that you have come from and their survival that has gotten you here today. My great-grandmother, by my age, had lost 5 of her children and her husband. And the title is a nod to Alice Walker's In Search of Our Mother's Gardens. In Search of Mary's Garden. By 40, my great-grandmother puts up jars of pickles beside memories of her husband and 5 of her 8 children. To support her early frost survivors, she commits the mortal sin of missing Sunday Mass. 7 days a week, she walks to the Perry's house, washboards their trousers, irons their flour sack dresses, rolls their pie crusts, cursives their baby Flora's birth date into her own family Bible I am to inherit. Late Sunday afternoon, long after hymnals are closed, kneelers put up, she walks home, genuflects on her dirt-floored chapel, picks warm tomatoes and green beans into a bushel, prunes and coos her beloved lilacs. Oh, the lilacs, dust purple and unnecessary, while her 3 wait, hungry for dinner. And so the message from my great-grandmother to me and that I share with you is to, even in the most difficult times, to tend the lilacs. The next poem I'd like to read is not a poem of my own. This is a poem by poet Chinedu Akobi. He's a San Mateo County poet and spoken word artist who was tased to death 2 to 3 years ago by San Mateo County deputies, none of whom have been charged and all of whom are still on duty. This is called Only God Knows by Chinedu Akobi. I'm in tune with the cosmos, and only God knows the future of lost souls searching for peace on broken roads. I feel despair in the air when the wind blows, the world is cold. Nevertheless, I try not to get too high or get too low as my story unfolds. I'm dealing with trauma, struggling to stay alive in the jungle, still dreaming of a better tomorrow, experiencing joy and sorrows, but like the rose that grows through the concrete. I'm a miracle. And only God knows all that I've been through. And only God knows all that I've been through. So the next poem I'd like to read is called Seminole Regional Wilderness Offers Lessons in Letting Go of What I Thought My Life Would Look Like. You know, life has a way of throwing all of us curveballs. And we are all built for curveballs. We're all built for what I call life wallops. And when they come, we have what it takes to get through. And so this poem is written when Antonio, we were talking about sense of place. I find myself most home when I'm in our regional parks, Huddart Park in Woodside, Seminole Regional Wilderness. I love Belmont's Water Dog Lake. And when I walk there with my feet grounded into the earth, I know I'm home. And I find so many lessons there when I'm in nature. And on this particular day, as I was hiking, it occurred to me how we are all built for change. And I found so many messages of that in nature. So this again is called Snow Regional Wilderness, offers lessons in letting go of what I thought my life would look like. A woodpecker tidies acorns in its tree trunk pantry, stunting forests that might have been. Still, the never-to-be trees keep their place in our riparian conversation. Everywhere along this muddy path, the dead of winter is alive with acceptance. Through an organza curtain of mist, toy-on berries say, "Welp, here's red." In the greenlessness, turkey tail mushrooms say, "Here is the expansiveness of brown." Roots and rocks say, "Here is our place." At the exact point, a creek says, "Here is no struggle at all," and tumbles a different curve. In these woods, no straight lines. Everything built to change course. Even the shortest day says, "Here is where we bend again toward the light." And for my last poem, I'd like to read, it's called On Social Distancing. This is a poem that was written obviously at the beginning of COVID. And I had written it with reference to all of the people across the world who had died from COVID. And for this poetry reading, I switched out a couple of the references to include a reference to Minneapolis and a reference to San Mateo County. This is called On Social Distancing. Isn't social distancing what we've been practicing all along? Sheltering in place inside our 6-foot radii of us, them. We install barbed wire words, unfriend childhood friends, block uncles, ghost lovers. We box up students by date of birth, classroom by classroom, wall grandparents in their war-tested wisdom in homes. We construct prisons, more prisons, cages. We drone our brothers and sisters from such distance, we no longer have to face ourselves in the whites of their eyes. Haven't we gerrymandered and ghettoed ourselves already, species by disappearing species? So this is what it takes. A 0.125 micron particle to reveal how countries are illusions, how a Wuhan doctor's body is a Daegu teacher's body, is a Turanian mother's body, is a Minneapolis father's body, is a San Mateo County poet's body, is my body. It takes a microorganism 500 times smaller than the diameter of a human hair to infect us with this truth. That borders cannot keep us from each other. And separation has always been our sickness. So here we are, mouths behind face masks, smiling with our eyes, hands pressing hands through glass, reaching across quarantines, through airwaves and screens. The way sunlight streams through the only pinhole in a wall. A California poppy, oranges through cement. Water empties itself of a vase through a hairline crack without struggle, or because struggle. Hope spreads like a virus or an Italian aria, balcony to balcony. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that wonderful, wonderful reading, Jackie. What a beautiful way to start us off. You know, you mentioned Huddard Park. My family and I go there all the time to go for runs, and it's just a whole different world, the flora and the fauna. And so I think particularly in East Palo Alto, just to bring it back, something that I always have to remember is that there's so much in our surroundings, so many beautiful natural landscapes. We have the Baylands Trail. We have parks here and there as well. But I think in particularly the way that we're gonna thrive through this time is remembering, right, those beautiful descriptions you have, and making sure that we have leadership that really values and sees the value of folks who have those natural resources. So thank you for the spirit of your work and a reminder of what's it gonna take, and for your, just beautiful images. Thank you. Well, up next, I'm really honored to introduce Yaylee. Yaylee and I go way back. By way back, I mean a couple years, but it feels like ever since I met her, she has always been kindred spirit to me. Born and raised in Oakland, and I'll say a bit about that in the bio, but just I'm grateful for her, to have her with us, and I'm excited to, hear her work. Especially, I've always considered Oakland, and especially East Oakland, a sister city of East Palo Alto. And I think it's no mistake that a lot of the artists that myself and folks growing up listened to hailed from places like Oakland. And I think when we think about the future of cities like EPA, it's going to take learning from the artists of Oakland, the artists from Belmont, right? People who have been doing it and are showing us what's it going to take. So thank you, Yalie, for being here. And I'm excited that you're continuing our reading. Yaylee Kamara is a Sierra Leonean-American writer. She's an educator and researcher from, that's right, Oakland, California. She is the author of A Brief Biography of My Name, which was included in the New Generation African Poets, a chapbook box set in 2018, and When the Living Sing, 2017. Kamara's poetry can be found in The Furious Flower, seeding the future of African American poetry, in Callaloo, in Southern Indiana Review, in Adroit Journal, in Pop-Up Magazine, in Puerto del Sol, and elsewhere. She has received fellowships from the Vermont Studio Center, the National Book Critics Circle, and Callaloo, and was a finalist for the Brunel African Poetry Prize. She earned an MFA in poetry from Indiana University, Bloomington, of which I'm jealous from working with folks like Adrian Matika and Ross Gay, but we'll leave it at that. Good for her. And is currently a doctoral student in creative writing and English literature at the University of Cincinnati, where she is a Yates Fellow. She's doing big things, y'all. Please give it up for my dear sister, Yaylee.
Hello, everyone. I'm so happy and honored to be here. And I'm so happy and honored to be reading with Jackie and Eileen. Jackie, I just really loved and appreciated your poetry, and I really appreciated your inclusion of Chinedu Okobi, who was one of my first poetry heroes, and really was maybe one of the first young people that I ever saw writing poems, and it made it feel possible for me. So I'm just so grateful that you included his spirit in this special occasion. I'm so happy to be supporting this event, and from a distance, Antonio's candidacy for City Council. And I had the good fortune of meeting Antonio last summer at the Vermont Studio Center, where we were both fellows. And one of the first things I remarked about Antonio, I'm gonna do a little bit about you, then I'll get to my poems. But one of the first things I remarked about Antonio was at our orientation, he made a point of letting everybody know that he was from East Palo Alto. It was one of the first few words out of his mouth. And I was so touched by that, because I was just thinking about how important home was to him in the first few breaths of his introduction. And we were in the middle of Vermont, you know, and it was just important for him to share that and to introduce himself that way. And it meant a lot to me. And I realized that I found kin in that moment, because I feel similarly about Oakland. And I know that Oakland is important to my attitude, to shape my worldview and perspectives and politics. And I know that East Palo Alto has done the same for Antonio. And as we're both first generation Americans, it's really a pleasure and an honor to walk this life with someone who I relate to on multiple levels. And I know that Antonio has such a great respect and appreciation for diversity and culture, and it's always championed their import. And I just keep on thinking about the ways that it shows up for Antonio, not only in his poetry, but in his academics, and his just worldview. And also I'm just even thinking about an image that I saw of Antonio about a year ago, and he was wearing his regalia for Oxford, but was wearing some Nike Cortez sneakers at the same time. And I feel like that exemplified all these worlds coming together, and it exemplifies like how dynamic Antonio is. And just in thinking about the world too, so often when we we get credentials, the world tells us to leave home. And what does it mean when you return to home, and when you want to be at home, and when you want to champion home? And so it's just an honor to see that, and it's an honor to see that full return, and it's an honor to see you resist leaving home and coming back and wanting to do and to enrich the fabric of home. And you know, I'm from a sister city. I agree, Oakland is a sister city. So from a sister city to my brother, who is a native son of East Palo Alto, I'm just grateful to be here and to share poems with you all. Some that think about Oakland, spirit, solidarity, and just humanity in unusual places. And so the first poem I'm gonna read is a poem called Oakland is Home, Home is Myth. Oakland is a killing field, they say. But what about the fragrance of candy in public places, and how autumn waits tight-lipped while summer slowly stretches its limbs like a tired infant? The upper level of the MacArthur BART station smells like Palmer's cocoa butter, because being ashy in the town is worse than jaywalking. The aroma of chocolate blankets the opposing platforms while warm air kisses bare ankles and calves. Folks are ready to flex for this last bit of summer. October here is like July almost anywhere else. Oakland is a killing field, they say, but what if in this story of trickling blood there is no gun, but instead a finger pricked by a blackberry bush on Thornhill Drive? And what if the sting is forgiven when the fruit's tangy juice launches itself across the endpoints of our mouths like a shooting star at the horizon of Skyline Boulevard? Sometimes pain in Oakland comes from foraging through a thicket of joy. Oakland is a killing field, they say. But what about ritual rising from downtown's liquid belly? Amoeba-shaped Lake Merritt is the largest man-made body of water in America. No native in the last 50 years has lived to tell about happily swimming in its murky brown pool, for we know better. We show our love from the shores. You'll find us sitting cross-legged, either sharing office break secrets or watching our babies tangle in the verdant grass blades of the lake's banks. Lake Merritt is a confessional booth. We release our fears and secrets into the mouth of algae hungering to filter any wisdom from our chaos. We show gratitude in return, crafting an air-shaped haiku at the water's edge, the town pilgrimage, exchange worry for hope, and wash away madness. That was a haiku. Oakland is a killing field, they say. But what about Raphael Sadiq's voice and how it coaxes the fog to burn invisibly? Or the silver-haired stranger who makes a paper plane with the little boy he just met at the Fruitvale BART station and then teaches him how to mischievously fly it down the 54 buses narrow aisle? What about our Michelin food rating surveys? The way we walk slowly past Mexican, Ethiopian, and Korean eateries just to make sure that the food is good enough for Mexican, Ethiopian, and Korean folks to eat there too. Oakland is a killing field, they say. Oakland is a killing field, maybe, they say. Most outsiders quietly confess to not knowing which is better, to approach the town with a fistful of flowers or a frame covered by a bulletproof vest. They fidget while we walk past, the keys to the town's front door jingling in our pocket. Wise, sassy, fickle, and human, we are the bucktooth city that made you wish you never wore braces. Land of dirty concrete and sunshine, land of the slain and the ever-rising, land of Tom Hanks and bullets, land of chai shows and market hall, land of chow mein and pine trees. It's true, our contradiction is dizzying. We fall and get back up again and tell you that we didn't mean to make our mistakes look like a dance, all that big booty attitude in those small Bay Area jeans. How many times have they told us that we are marred and marked by the failures with which we thirst to atone? Yes, we mourn, but let us celebrate too. We are warriors. Hello or goodbye. They extend reluctant salutations, and still we let them in our living room. Oakland, they call you riotous, though you're just a mouthful of pop rocks. To claim that your nightfall is endless is easy. If they knew how to read the darkness, then they would have figured it out by now. The object that casts the biggest shadow is the one closest to the light. So the next poem I'm gonna read, I'm obsessed with haikus and try to put them everywhere. And so I have a couple of haikus that are gonna show up along the way to kind of intersperse and break up some of the longer pieces. So this one is a haiku called You Can't Touch This, after the MC Hammer song, Oakland Pride. So it's You Can't Touch This, Oakland, California, 1990, and this is my haiku. My 6th birthday present was a pair of Hammer pants made of real kente. And that's that. And I'm gonna read a couple more poems about, a couple more poems. This one is about Nia Wilson, who was senselessly murdered a few years ago at the MacArthur BART station. And many people know that it was a racially motivated murder. And it's something that happened after I left Oakland, but it's been on my mind and I think about her quite often, especially because that BART station is one that I grew up closest to, and it's the one I used twice a day before I left to move to Indiana for grad school. So it's something that is a landmark and a place that felt like home until the betrayal of this event. So one of my goals as a writer is to keep spirits alive of people that their lives have been senselessly lost to different forms of violence and systemic injustices. And so this poem is called How to Write an Ekphrastic Poem about a Nia Wilson memorial portrait. So just kind of some thoughts I had after looking at Nia Wilson memorial portraits. Resist the temptation of making allusions to Nia becoming a heavenly ornament. Engage first with her life before rushing to canonization. Note what your query unearths. Nia's graduation colors were green and gold. In a photo of the front rows of Dewey Academy's commencement ceremony, a folding chair holds the almost sum total of Nia's big day. White roses, photos of her face, and iconic flawless eyebrows, a cap and starch gown, a graduation medal, and a high school diploma. Fix your eyes on the photo again, as one of them will eventually become the subject of a tribute that will become the center of your work. In it, honey brown Nia squats and clasps her hands in a way that always makes girls from Oakland look fierce. She dons a striped shirt that reminds you of the flavors of now and later candies, and at the knees, her mid-wash jeans are embellished with silver ball gown sequins. She rocks a pair of checkered Vans slip-on shoes, and her bamboo earrings shine brassy and seem to be mid-sway in the image. And speaking of earrings, you return to her head, behind which the artist renders a halo whose color is hard to describe. Slightly separately, you recall a photo of Nia's pallbearers, a squad of Black women decked out in ivory. Tell your little sister to stop napping on the train after her work shift. Steady your eye on the halo behind Nia's head. Run its colors across your tongue to find its name. Maybe it's the color of butterscotch, button candy wrappers, or the color of the slicked sliced peaches in the Del Monte fruit cups. Run the halo's colors across your fingers. Move your eye from the crown of roses and their leaves and think of her resemblance to a Coptic saint. How she seems to look beyond the day, her gaze affixed on a gate you cannot enter. Start there. Consider the implications of hovering so close to Black death. What is the intention behind the details you choose to curate? Think for an hour, a week, a season, a year, then risk being wrong. Okay, I'm gonna read a few more poems. So this poem is simply a love letter to Gabby Douglas, who I think is, gosh, she's just a hero. And I remember when she was winning all these awards for her athleticism and her brilliance, and everybody was, well, not everybody, a lot of people were focusing on her hair. And I decided that I wanted to just talk about her brilliance. And I wrote her a bunch of haikus. That's a love letter. So it's a haiku love letter for Gabby Douglas. Nappy wins the gold. Medals hang from 4C curls. Your head holds glory. They said, focus on your edges. They must have meant both ends of the vault. The problem is you love yourself whole. This is the most dangerous act. Bend, but do not break. Your backflip, a metaphor for this whole Black life. If you'd placed your hand on your chest, then we wouldn't have heard your music. Gabby, come knock on our doors. Ask us what we've named our dolls and daughters. While mothers pray for your flight, babies watch your wings caress Jim's skyline. We hold you close. Smile when we touch the forests that grow on our own heads. So I think I'm gonna read one more haiku and I'll read a poem. So another haiku was a haiku for, okay, also confession, I'm 35 3/4 and I don't drive. So I spend a lot of time on public transportation. So if you have a public transportation committee I can support from over here, I'd be very happy to, Antonio. So this haiku is called a haiku for the bus, 54 Fruitvale BART Station / Merritt College, Oakland, California. She mouths psalms while the other reads Sojourner Truth, a bus, an altar. And so that was just a moment sitting between two Black teenagers on a bus and what I observed in that space. And the last poem I'm gonna read is a poem about language. I'm first generation American. It's also thinking about the fun and the brilliance of language and how what we hear becomes our own. This poem's called Biseidu. While sipping coffee in my mother's Toyota, we hear the bird call of two teenage boys in the parking lot. One says, Biseidu, the other returns as they reach for each other. Their cupped handshake pops like the first fat firecrackers of summer. Their fingers shimmy as if they're solving a Rubik's Cube just beyond our sight. Moments later, their schwins head in opposite directions. My mother turns to me, revealing the milky John Waters mustache thin foam on her upper lip. Waiting them Biseidu, not English? She asks, tickled by this tangle of new language. All right, be safe, dude. I pull apart each syllable like string cheese for her. Oh yeah, dem na real paddy, she smiles, surprisingly broken by the tenderness expressed by what half my family might call thugs. Biseidu, 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 we chirp in the car, then nightly into our phones after I leave California. Biseidu, she says, as she softly muffles the rattling of my bones in newfound sobriety. Biseidu, I say years later, her response made raspy by an oxygen treatment at the ER. Biseidu, we whisper to each other across the country. Like some word from deep in a somewhere too newborn pure for the outdoors, but we saw those two boys do it in broad daylight under a decadent ruinous sun. Biseidu, Biseidu, we say, Biseidu, and split one more for the road, for all the struggle, tumble, drown. Biseidu, we say, to get on the good foot. We get off of the phone, tight like the bulbous air of two palms that have just kissed. Thank you so much.
And see, that's, ladies and gentlemen, all non-gender binary folks, that is exactly why we got Yalie as well here, because we're going to get, Jacki to really give us the forestry, the flora, the fauna. And Yalie is reminding us of the flora and fauna within us in the so-called urban space. And, case in point, Oakland has always been a sister city of East Palo Alto. And I'm really glad that through Yalie's work, we see that beautifully rendered. Thank you, Yalie, for those poems. What a gift to have that launch our campaign. We're gonna move right along, and it's just really such an all-star lineup, and this next poet is no exception. I am so thrilled to have Aileen as our next speaker. Aileen has been such a generous and warm spirit and supporter of the Lopez campaign, even though she's such a big shot in stature as poet laureate of our county in San Mateo, but she has been nothing but generous with her time. She's also the head of Paloma Press, and so she is one of the pioneers, in my opinion, of what art and politics is really about, what it means to be an ambassador of letters, and for us to really enfranchise our communities through poetry. So I thank Aileen for being here, and I thank Aileen for her tireless work. And we see that clearly from East Palo Alto, and we look forward to keep working side by side, even though I might get in the more nitty gritty politics and you get the good stuff. But no, I'm just kidding. We all, it's all important. It's all important. All right. So without further ado, Aileen is the poet laureate of San Mateo County. That's right, our county, California. Widely anthologized, she is also the author of 2 poetry collections and 3 chapbooks through Moria Books, the acclaimed Lacofo series. Aileen curates Power to the Poets, a reading series on solidarity and social justice, an event which I had the great fortune of being a part of, and is the curator of Peninsula Virtual Book Fest, featuring authors from the SF Bay Area and beyond. There's so much more I can say about Aileen, but I want her to take the mantle and her to speak, not me. So please give a warm shout out and welcome to our very own Eileen Cassinetto.
Thank you so much, Antonio. Good evening, friends and fellow community members. I'm very honored to be here this evening in support of Antonio Lopez's bid for the City Council of East Palo Alto. The cornerstone of Antonio's campaign includes the development of a new library in East Palo Alto. Antonio envisions more opportunities for East Palo Alto youth and addressing the current housing crisis. All these issues resonated with me. Having worked on a youth project with the Housing Leadership Council of San Mateo County a few months ago, I strongly believe that our young people are co-authors of our community narrative and of the spaces they inhabit. I support Antonio because his plan will not only amplify cultural literacy, but also ensure the economic mobility of East Palo Alto's youth. We all know that young people make a community stronger, and a strong community raises strong young people by offering them a home and a future. As someone who has also been marginalized and othered, I wrote this poem about hope, which I now would like to share with all of you. Still, like air, we rise toward the light, our movement widening as though in prayer, holy and urgent. I will say your name, an act of love more powerful than the weight of air or the falling of light. Like clouds speaking their truth, every heap and layer, every curl of hair a reckoning. Still I pray for grace to hear your story and what you know of clouds. Why they shine at night, where they touch the ground, how they birth a star. Perhaps you will want to know my story and why these queries. Like, what will it cost to cross an inch of scorn or climb a wall of fear? How much to plow the air, to read the clouds? How much for a sip of water, a gulp of air? How much for 3 square feet of space, for the narrowest breathing place? How much for the life of my child? Still I ask, an act of grace as I rise toward the light. I will read one more poem, and this is a reflection on the current wildfires that have affected so many of our communities here in the Bay Area and beyond. This poem is about rebirth. Fireborn. I once went wild over repurposed things. Tweeds, beads, driftwood, silvery wormwood got worked into frames, footgear, chandeliers. My favorite, though, is a floor lamp from a limb trimmed from an old manzanita, the color of burnished red pear. Wild child of the last wildfire, evergreen and unsparing, our gratitude for the little apples and the many equally wild and resolute things that fed on them. That charm of hummingbirds, that grist of bees, that flutter of butterflies. You were the kindling and the offering, the time-worn prayer above the movement of air. Thank you so much, everyone. Please support Antonio's vision for the future of our youth. No eres lo que logras, eres lo que superas.
Thank you, Eileen, for just those warm poems, so fierce and powerful. I always love your work because it's sort of just this quiet storm. You're not quite. It's not flashy or loud, but you start to become really moved, and by the end, you're still affected by the words. And so I hope that all folks listening in, whether they're first-time poets or long-time poets, have that same moving spirit that your work carries with me. Thank you, Eileen, for being here, and thank you for the kind words and the Spanish. That means a lot to me. Well, I'm going to transition now to a bit more the form. On my end, I'm not going to read any poems, but I did prepare something for tonight that I would like to read to everyone. Thank you, everyone, for being so patient in attendance. Gracias a todos por ser tan pacientes como una audiencia. People have been asking me, why are you running for city council? Mucha gente me ha preguntado, ¿por qué quieres ser parte del consejo municipal? It is because I want to be an example for our youth. Porque quiero ser un ejemplo para nuestra juventud. A lot of people say I am too young. Mucha gente me ha dicho que pues eres demasiado joven. I kindly reply, and how old was Fred Hampton when he united Black and Latino and progressive white activists through what he called the Rainbow Coalition, a phrase that Jesse Jackson would popularize? Y le respondo con todo respeto, ¿qué edad tenía Fred Hampton cuando unió activistas negras y latinas y americanas bajo lo que él llamó la coalición de arcoíris? Una frase que Jesse Jackson popularizará. And how old was Dorothy Bridges when she walked up the steps of William Frantz Elementary School in Louisiana, and with those small shoes began the long fight for desegregation in New Orleans? ¿Y cuántos años tenía Dorothy Bridges cuando caminó los escalones de William Frantz School, una primaria en el estado de Louisiana, y con esos zapatos chicos empezó la lucha larga de segregación en New Orleans? 6 years old. 6 años. And how old was Cesar Chavez when he established the chapter of Community Service Organization here in San Jose, one of the most important civil rights organizations for Latinos in California? ¿Y qué edad tenía Cesar Chavez cuando él estableció la Organización de Servicios Comunitarios, una de las organizaciones de derechos civiles más importantes para latinos en California? 26, my age. 26, mi edad. And so I respectfully answer, political experience is important, no doubt about that. And yet, we all start somewhere. Otra vez les contesto con ternura, la experiencia política es importante, no cabe duda. Sin embargo, todos tenemos que empezar en algún lugar. And for the people of East Palo Alto, our beginnings take many forms. Y para la gente de East Palo Alto, nuestros principios toman muchas formas. As many forms as there are people. Tantas formas como hay gente. Did any of the decades of the President's Council's experience prepare them for COVID, for East Palo Alto becoming the worst city in the Bay Area for the pandemic? ¿Alguna de las décadas de experiencia política preparó el corriente Consejo Municipal para COVID, para East Palo Alto convertido en la peor ciudad en el área de la bahía de la pandemia? Did any of the decades of the Samaritan House, the organization that this council entrusted with the COVID crisis, prepare them for the massive influx of applicants for rent relief? Alguna de las décadas de existencia de Samaritan House, la organización que este consejo encargó a enfrentar la crisis de COVID, les preparó para el enorme flujo de familias solicitando por alivio de las rentas. A small example, from July to August of this year. Deje darles un ejemplo chiquito. from July, desde julio a agosto de este mes, 3,900 applications fell on the steps of Samaritan House. You guys know how many folks that staff had at that moment to prepare for almost 4,000 people? Five full-time people. In other words, in response to the mass scale of almost 4,000 applicants, they contracted two people in addition of part-time, temporary. Deja darles un pequeño ejemplo. Desde julio a agosto de este mes, 3,900 solicitudes cayeron a la puerta de Samaritan House. ¿Ustedes saben cuánto personal ellos tenían en aquel momento? 5 de tiempo completo o full-time. O sea, en respuesta de la gran cantidad de casi 4,000 aplicaciones, contrataron 2 personas de tiempo parcial o part-time, pero temporariamente. I say this not to criticize Samaritan House. I am eternally grateful for the work they do and hope they continue to do to uplift the people of East Palo Alto. Yo no digo esto para criticar Samaritan House. Estoy eternamente agradecido por el trabajo que hacen y espero que continúen a hacerlo para ayudar a la gente de East Palo Alto. What I am concerned about is the council's ability to adapt, to respond to the moment, to check if a nonprofit they hired actually has the infrastructure to meet the unprecedented challenges this city and its people face. And if they don't, how will the city's leadership intervene to ensure it does? Lo que me preocupa es la capacidad del Consejo Corriente a adaptar, a responder al momento, a averiguar si una organización sin fines de lucro que el Consejo ha contratado verdaderamente tiene la infraestructura para abordar los retos que esta ciudad y su gente enfrentan. Y esa organización, si no tiene los recursos ni el personal adecuado para abordar la crisis, ¿cómo intervenirían el liderazgo de esta ciudad? And if the organization does not have the resources nor the personnel adequate to address the crisis, how will the leadership intervene to make sure it does? I don't say this because I like to criticize, to besmirch our council members for its own sake, but because I love the tenants of this city, because I have seen with my own eyes the sheer scale of this crisis' impact. I've passed through apartments and have seen entire floors full of slips stuck on the doors. I have seen tenants who left their studios because they knew they would not be able to pay their back rent, let alone the payments that wait them once the moratorium ends. Yo no digo esto porque me gusta criticar. Lo digo porque quiero a los inquilinos de esta ciudad, porque he visto en carne propia el nivel del impacto de esta crisis. He pasado por los apartamentos. He visto segundo pisos llenos de sobres pegados a las puertas. He visto inquilinos que se huyeron de los estudios porque supieron que no iban a poder pagar la renta, mucho menos los pagos que vendrán cuando se termine el moratorio. Just this morning, I watched an NBC News report on South Texas, an area predominantly Latino, not dissimilar to East Palo Alto with a population of 65% Latino. In this report, the journalist interviewed a doctor on the front lines of COVID who said, quote, "We have parameters for a perfect storm: poverty, diabetes, hypertension. To this list, I would add overcrowding and the fact that the people of East Palo Alto are, without hyperbole, the essential workers of the entire Bay Area Peninsula." Justo esta mañana, vi un reportaje de NBC sobre el sur de Texas, un área mayoritariamente latino, y en ese respeto no tan diferente que East Palo Alto, con nuestra población de 65% latino. En ese reportaje, el periodista entrevistó a un médico trabajando en los hospitales y dijo: "Tenemos la receta para una perfecta tormenta: la pobreza, el diabetes, la alta tensión, y a esa lista yo agregaría la sobrepoblación y el hecho de que la gente de East Palo Alto son, sin exagerar, los trabajadores esenciales de la península del área de la bahía. It is the people of East Palo Alto who clean the floors of Stanford. Es la gente de East Palo Alto que limpian los pisos de Stanford, where I will study, donde yo estudiaré. It is the people of East Palo Alto who scrub the toilets of the multi-million-dollar homes in Atherton. Es la gente de East Palo Alto que fregan las tinas de mansiones de millones de dólares en Atherton. It is my uncle who works construction in Atherton. Es mi tío que trabaja construction en Atherton. It is my father who for over 3 decades has worked as a busboy, then moved up as a waiter in the hotels of Palo Alto, first Ricky's Hyatt on Restauradero Avenue, now on Sheraton in El Camino Real. Es mi papá que por más de 3 décadas ha trabajado como un lavaplatos, un busboy, y luego ascendió a un mesero en los hoteles de Palo Alto. Primero Ricky's Hyatt en Restauradero Avenue y ahora Sheraton en El Camino Real. It is this community that every single day is risking its life, the health of its families, because there is a part of us that still holds on to the belief that with hard work alone, we can make it. Es esta comunidad que por cada día se está arriesgando su vida, la salud de sus familias, porque parte de nosotros aún cree en la creencia que si le echamos ganas, podemos sobresalir. I am running because I am tired of seeing my community struggle. Yo soy un candidato porque estoy cansado de ver a mi gente sufrir. I am running because when I came back home from Oxford this past March, I saw the same vacant lots undeveloped for years. I saw neighbors posting for sale signs on their homes. Yo soy un candidato porque cuando yo regresé a casa este marzo pasado, recién graduado de la Universidad de Oxford, yo vi los mismos terrenos baldíos, igual de baldíos de cuando me fui para estudiar en el extranjero. My name is Antonio Lopez, born and raised here in East Palo Alto. Mi nombre es Antonio Lopez. Yo nací y fui criado aquí en East Palo Alto. I grew up on programs like WIC, the Ecumenical Hunger Program, and the Boys and Girls Club. Yo crecí con programas como WIC, el Ecumenical Hunger Program, y también the Boys and Girls Club. My parents came to the city in the 1980s when it was still affordable to buy a home here. Mis papás llegaron a esta ciudad en los 80, cuando aún era todavía económico y para comprar una casa aquí. They are Mexican immigrants. They were poor, but hopeful that they can provide a better life in this new land for themselves and their children. Son inmigrantes mexicanos. Llegaron con pocos centavos y con la esperanza de que podrían dar una vida mejor en este nuevo país para ellos mismos y para sus chiquillos. And so please, everyone gathered around the room, answer me this, because I have not figured it out in all my schooling. How is it that we are in one of the wealthiest places in the entire world? How some of the highest concentration of billionaires are in the world right here, and yet we have some of the country's most overcrowded homes? ¿Cómo es que nosotros estamos en uno de los lugares más ricos en el mundo, que tenemos una de las concentraciones de billonarios en el mundo más grandes, pero tenemos algunas de las casas más sobrepobladas en el país? How is it that we have so much capital flowing in the Silicon Valley, and yet little of that has reached our community, our most disadvantaged residents? ¿Cómo es que hay tanto dinero que fluye por el aire de la bahía, en Palo Alto y Menlo Park y Atherton, pero aún poco de esos fondos han llegado a nuestra comunidad, a los más necesitados de nuestros residentes? It is our time that we fight for the resources we deserve, what I am calling the EPA Bill of Rights. Es nuestro tiempo para luchar por los recursos que merecemos, que hemos merecido por décadas. Recursos que yo llamo la Declaración de Derechos de East Palo Alto. The people of East Palo Alto need a candidate who is able to first and foremost bring all of East Palo Alto, Black and brown, homeowner and tenant together and find common ground. El pueblo de East Palo Alto necesita un candidato que pueda unir a todos, afroamericano y latino, dueño de casa e inquilino, y buscar lo que tenemos en común. They need someone who will advocate for safer sidewalks for our pedestrians, create parking regulations to keep Menlo Park and Palo Alto cars out, and ensure that those who live here can park here. Necesitamos a alguien que puede promover banquetas seguras para los peatones, para nuestras mamás que tienen que llevar sus bebés en carriolas por las calles, for our mothers who are pushing their babies through strollers on the streets and they can't even go to the corner because the truck is already parked on top of the sidewalk, porque trocas y camionetas están estacionados en las banquetas. Necesitamos a alguien que pueda crear regulaciones de estacionamiento para asegurar que carros de Menlo Park y Palo Alto estén afuera de nuestra ciudad, para asegurar que los que viven aquí pueden estacionarse aquí. We need someone who can work with developers and ensure that these funds are fairly distributed across all residents so that we may have enough affordable homes for our low-income folks. Necesitamos a alguien que puede trabajar con desarrolladores y asegurar que los fondos estén distribuidos justamente a todos los residentes para que tengamos suficientes viviendas económicas para nuestros residentes de bajos ingresos. We need someone who can work with developers and ensure that for every job created, there are 10 rooms for EPA residents, a 1 to 10 deal, nothing less. Necesitamos a alguien que pueda negociar con los jefes de corporaciones que nos rodean, que quieren hacer negocio en nuestra ciudad, que por cada trabajo creado haya 10 cuartos para los inquilinos, un trato de 1 a 10 y nada menos. We need someone who is able to tackle issues of our city before they become issues of our city. Necesitamos a alguien que pueda enfrentar los problemas de esta ciudad antes de que se conviertan en problemas de nuestra ciudad. We need someone who takes the criticism and concerns of our people and actually does something with it. Necesitamos a alguien que toma la crítica y las preocupaciones de nuestra gente y por fin hace algo con ellas. We need someone who isn't just thinking about the present crisis, no matter how bad it is, but is thinking about the months and years that follow. Necesitamos a alguien que no solo está pensando en la crisis corriente, pero ya está preparando para los meses y años después. We need someone who is thinking about the generation after ours, after mine, who will expand programs like Horacio Herrera's Ravenswood Junior Soccer Club, so that our youth will have safe and fun spaces to learn and grow outside the classroom. Necesitamos a alguien que está pensando en la generación que sigue, que va a expandir programas como Ravenswood Junior Soccer Club para que nuestros jóvenes tengan espacios seguros y divertidos para aprender y crecer afuera del salón. We need someone who is thinking about our seniors. God, our seniors, we have to take care of them right now. Who is committed to do all he can to ensure that despite the social restrictions of COVID, they are reached out to, they are taken care of, and that they continue to lead lives of dignity. Necesitamos a alguien que está pensando en nuestros viejitos, nuestros ancianos, que está comprometido en hacer todo lo que pueda para que sigan viviendo con dignidad. We need someone who will serve as a bridge between developer and community leader, landlord and tenant, elder and young blood. Necesitamos a alguien que pueda servir como un puente entre gerente y líder de vecindario, casero e inquilino, anciano y joven. As someone born and raised in this city, I am uniquely qualified to address these challenges. Como alguien nacido y criado en esta ciudad, estoy únicamente calificado para abordar estos retos. I've worked my way up from difficult circumstances, not unlike people from East Palo Alto, and received scholarships to acquire degrees at Duke University and Oxford, and this fall I'll begin my PhD at Stanford. He sobresalido de circunstancias difíciles. He recibido becas para adquirir títulos de Duke University, de Oxford en Inglaterra, y este otoño empezaré mi doctorado en Stanford. My education gives me the ability to forge alliances between the different groups and sectors of this city. Mi educación me da la habilidad para forjar alianzas entre los diferentes grupos y sectores de esa ciudad. I can be a bridge that helps to unite all of us in our young and proud city. Yo puedo ser un puente que ayuda a unir a todos nosotros en esta ciudad joven y orgullosa. So I invite everyone tonight to explore my campaign website, AntonioLopezForCityCouncil.com, as well as our Facebook page at Vote Antonio Lopez. And to the residents of East Palo Alto, I ask that you vote for Antonio Lopez for City Council so that all of us can become a bridge for success. Así que invito a todos los que exploren mi sitio web, AntonioLopezForCityCouncil.com, y también mi página de Facebook, Vote Antonio López. Y a los residentes de East Palo Alto, doy un mensaje especial. Ayúdenme en ser un puente al éxito y voten por Antonio López para el Consejo Municipal. Y para terminar la noche, to end the evening, I leave you with the words of a young Tongan preacher in the year 2000, an event at the Whiskey Gulch, which no longer exists in East Palo Alto. Les dejo con las palabras de una predicadora tonga. En el año fue 2000, un evento que tuvo lugar en el Whiskey Gulch, un lugar que ya no existe, a place no longer exists in East Palo Alto, but it's such an important historical landmark, home to some 50 businesses. Era el lugar de casi más de 50 negocios. And she said, never look down at it. This is in 2000. She said, never look down at anyone. Never look down at any place, because you never know what they will become one day. Nunca humillen a nadie. Nunca ignoran a cualquier lugar, porque nunca sabes a dónde terminarán un día. Y con eso, and with that, I thank everyone for coming to attendance. I invite you to check out our website. I invite you to thank all our poets for this evening who have done an amazing job to really remind us what's possible, to remind us that it's going to take all of us to come together. And I want you to thank them, give them a shout out, send them a message on Facebook, support their books, support their work, because politics and art go hand in hand, because we're both in the business of imagining a better world. And I thank the arts for having me help do that. Y para todos les doy gracias por haber venido, y invito a ustedes que dejen un mensaje a todos los artistas presentes que ofrecieron sus obras. Diles gracias, mándeles un saludo, y porque yo sé que para mí los artes fueron tan importantes para cultivar mi forma de ser y mi política. Y las dos cosas, los artes y la política, van mano a mano, porque los dos están en el negocio de imaginar un mejor futuro. And with that, thank you everyone for listening. We'll have more on the campaign to show you, and have a very good evening. Con eso les dejo. Tendremos más en el futuro de la campaña, y que pasen muy buenas noches. Manténganse seguros. Stay safe, everyone. God bless. Dios les bendiga.